He was not the kind of man people noticed when he walked into a room. He dressed simply, spoke softly, and kept his eyes down most of the time. Life had taught him that staying quiet made things easier. Less questions, less explaining, less pain. On the morning of the funeral, he stood in front of a small mirror in his bedroom, straightening the only dark suit he owned. It was old but clean. The sleeves were a little short and the collar felt tight, but it would do. The house was quiet behind him. Too quiet. His child was staying with a neighbor for the day. He had promised to be back before evening. He glanced at a small photo taped to the mirror. Just a normal photo taken years ago, before everything changed. He did not smile at it. He only nodded, as if reminding himself why he kept going. He had not planned to attend the funeral until late the night before. The man who had passed away was someone he once worked with long ago. They were never close, just shared a few shifts, a few tired jokes, a few lunches eaten in silence. When the message came saying there would be a service, something in him felt pulled to go. Maybe it was respect, maybe guilt, maybe he just felt like someone should show up. Money was always tight, so taking time off work was not easy. Every hour mattered. Rent, food, school supplies, repairs. Life did not pause for grief. Still, he felt that staying away would be wrong. So he arranged his day carefully, dropped his child off early, and drove across town in his aging car, hoping it would not make any strange noises on the way. The funeral was held at a small building that looked more like an old community hall than a place for goodbyes. The parking lot was half full. People stood in small groups, speaking in low voices. Some cried openly. Others stared at the ground, lost in thought. He parked far away, took a deep breath, and sat in the car for a moment longer than needed. Funerals always brought back memories he worked hard to keep buried. When he finally stepped inside, the smell of flowers hit him first. Too sweet, too heavy. He felt his chest tighten but pushed the feeling down. He signed the guest book quietly and moved to the back of the room, choosing a seat near the aisle. He preferred places where he could leave without drawing attention. The service had not started yet. Soft music played in the background. He looked around, recognizing no one. Faces blurred together, all wearing the same tired expressions. He wondered who the man had been outside of work, who loved him, who depended on him. These thoughts made him uncomfortable, so he focused on his hands instead. That was when he noticed her. She stood near the entrance, one hand resting on her lower back, the other holding onto the wall as if she might fall. Her pregnancy was impossible to miss. The dark dress she wore did not hide it. Her face was pale, and her eyes looked red, like she had been crying for hours. People passed by her, some glancing briefly, others not looking at all. No one stopped. He watched her for a moment, unsure. It was not his place. He told himself he was not good with words. He did not want to embarrass her. Still, something about the way she stood there alone felt wrong. It reminded him too much of moments in his own life when help never came. Slowly, he stood up. He walked toward her, careful not to rush. When she noticed him approaching, her shoulders tensed. He stopped a few steps away and spoke quietly. "Are you okay?" he asked. She shook her head, just once. Her lips trembled, but she did not cry. She tried to straighten herself, clearly embarrassed. "I'm fine," she said, though it was clear she was not. He nodded, accepting the answer but not fully believing it. He glanced around the room. "Would you like to sit?" he asked. "There's space in the back. It's quieter." For a second, she hesitated. Then she nodded again, this time slower. He offered his arm, not touching her unless she wanted him to. After a brief pause, she lightly held on to his sleeve. Her grip was weak, but steady enough. They walked together to the seat. He waited until she was settled before sitting beside her, leaving some space between them. He did not ask questions. He did not push conversation. He simply sat there, present. As the service began, he noticed her breathing was uneven. At one point, she pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold something in. He quietly reached into his pocket and offered her a clean handkerchief. She took it with a soft thank you, barely audible. The speaker talked about loss, about the life that had ended, about memories and legacy. The words floated through the room, but he barely heard them. His attention kept returning to the woman beside him. She looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. It was the kind that came from carrying too much alone. During a quiet moment, she leaned forward slightly, as if dizzy. Without thinking, he whispered, "I can get you some water." She nodded. He stood and moved carefully, trying not to disturb others. When he returned, she drank slowly, her hands shaking. "I didn't think anyone would notice," she said softly, staring at the floor. He shrugged. "I just did." That was all. They did not speak much after that. They did not need to. Sometimes silence was kinder than words. When the service ended and people began to stand, she looked overwhelmed again. He waited, letting the crowd thin out before helping her to her feet. Outside, the air felt lighter. She took a deep breath, then turned to him. "Thank you," she said. This time, her voice was steadier. "I didn't know anyone here." He nodded. "I didn't either." She gave a small, tired smile. For a moment, it seemed like she wanted to say more, but instead, she adjusted her bag on her shoulder. "I should go," she said. "Take care," he replied. She walked away slowly, one hand resting on her stomach. He watched until she disappeared around the corner of the building. He felt something strange in his chest. Not pride, not sadness, just a quiet feeling that he could not name. He returned to his car and sat for a while before starting the engine. The day felt heavier than before, though nothing in his own life had changed. Or so he thought. He drove home, his mind already shifting back to his responsibilities. Dinner needed to be made. Homework needed checking. Bills waited on the table. The world did not stop for funerals or chance meetings. As he pulled into his driveway hours later, he had no idea that the brief moment of kindness he barely thought about would soon turn his entire life upside down. He believed the day was over. Just another hard day survived. He was wrong. That night passed like most others. He cooked a simple meal, listened to his child talk about school, and nodded at the right moments even though his mind drifted. The image of the pregnant woman stayed with him. Not her face exactly, but the way she stood alone, as if the whole room had moved around her without seeing her. He told himself it was nothing. People crossed paths every day and never met again. That was just how life worked. After his child went to sleep, he sat at the small kitchen table and opened a stack of mail he had been avoiding. Bills, reminders, a notice about a late payment. He rubbed his eyes and sighed. The chair across from him was empty. It had been empty for years now. He pushed the thought away and focused on what he could control. He wrote down numbers, crossed them out, rewrote them again. By midnight, he was exhausted but no closer to a solution. When he finally lay down, sleep did not come easily. His mind replayed the funeral in pieces. The soft music, the smell of flowers, the way the woman's hand had trembled when she took the water from him. He wondered where she went after she left, if she made it home safely, if she had anyone waiting for her. He did not know why these questions mattered so much. The next morning started early. It always did. He packed lunches, checked homework, and tied shoelaces that never seemed to stay tight. After dropping his child at school, he went straight to work. The day was long and physical. He welcomed the distraction. By the time his shift ended, his body ached, and his mind felt quieter. On his way home, he stopped at a small grocery store. As he stood in line, he noticed a woman ahead of him struggling to lift a bag. Without thinking, he stepped forward and helped her. She thanked him, smiled, and moved on. He barely remembered her face minutes later. Yet the woman from the funeral stayed with him. That difference bothered him. Over the next few days, life returned to its usual rhythm. Work, home, school runs, meals made from whatever was cheapest that week. Still, every now and then, something small would pull his thoughts back. A pregnant woman on the bus. A lone figure sitting at the edge of a room. Each time, he felt the same quiet pull in his chest. 3 days after the funeral, his phone rang while he was fixing a loose cabinet door. He did not recognize the number. Normally, he let unknown calls go to voicemail. This time, he answered. "Hello," he said. There was a pause on the other end. Then a woman's voice, calm but careful. "I'm sorry to bother you. I hope I have the right number." "Yes," he replied slowly. Who is this? We met briefly at the funeral, she said. I wasn't sure you'd remember. He stood up straight. I remember. Another pause. I wanted to thank you properly. For that day, I didn't get the chance. You don't need to, he said quickly. It was nothing. I know you think that, she replied, but it wasn't nothing to me. He did not know what to say. He leaned against the counter, listening. I won't take much of your time, she continued. I just needed you to know that what you did mattered. I was having a very hard day. You made it easier. I'm glad, he said, and he meant it. They spoke only a little longer. She did not share details about herself, and he did not ask. Before hanging up, she said, I hope life is kind to you. After the call ended, he stood there for a long time, phone still in his hand. Something about her words stayed with him. Life is kind to you. He almost laughed at that. Life had not been kind for a long time, but maybe kindness showed up in other ways. Small ways, quiet ways. A week passed, then another. The memory of the funeral began to fade, pushed aside by daily worries. He focused on getting through each day. Some nights were harder than others. On those nights, he sat in the dark after his child fell asleep, listening to hum of the refrigerator, reminding himself that tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. One afternoon, as he returned home from work, he noticed a car parked near his house. It was not a neighbor's. Two people stood by it, talking quietly. His first thought was that something was wrong. His second was fear. He slowed his steps. As he got closer, one of them turned and looked at him. A tall man in a neat suit. The other was a woman holding a folder. They both smiled, polite but serious. Are you the one who lives here? The man asked. Yes, he said cautiously. Is there a problem? No problem, the woman replied. We were hoping to speak with you. About what? He almost asked but stopped himself. They introduced themselves, giving names he immediately forgot. Lawyers, they said. The word made his stomach tighten. He had never dealt with lawyers before. Not in a good way, at least. We don't want to alarm you, the man said, noticing his expression. This will only take a few minutes. He hesitated, then nodded. All right. They asked if they could come inside. He glanced at the door, thinking of his child who would be home soon. He agreed but stayed near the entrance, as if ready to show them out at any moment. Once inside, they did not sit. The woman opened her folder and took out a document. You recently attended a funeral, she said. Yes, he answered. His heart began to beat faster. Why? It was for a man you once worked with, the man added. You don't need to say anything. We already know. He crossed his arms, trying to stay calm. I don't understand. The woman exchanged a look with her partner. You offered help to a woman at that funeral. A pregnant woman. His breath caught. Yes. We'd like to ask you a few questions about that day, she said gently. He nodded, though confusion and worry swirled inside him. He told them exactly what happened. How he noticed her standing alone. How he offered her a seat. How he brought her water. How they spoke only a little. When he finished, the room felt very quiet. Did she tell you who she was? The man asked. No, he said. I didn't ask. Did she mention anything about money, inheritance, or legal matters? No, he replied firmly. Nothing like that. The woman smiled, almost relieved. That's what we thought. He looked between them. You still haven't told me why you're here. They took a moment before answering. The man whose funeral you attended left very specific instructions, the man said. Instructions that depended on an act of character. His mind struggled to catch up. I don't follow. The woman closed the folder slowly. Your kindness that day set something in motion, something you could not have known about. His chest tightened again, but this time with something close to fear. What kind of something? He asked. They did not answer right away. Instead, the woman said, May we come back later this evening? When you have more time. There's a lot to explain. He nodded, unsure what else to do. As they left, he stood in the doorway, watching their car pull away. His house felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. He closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. He had gone to a funeral expecting nothing. He had helped someone because it felt right. Now, strangers were talking about instructions and consequences. Whatever was coming next, he knew one thing for sure. His life was no longer moving in the quiet, predictable way he had grown used to. The rest of the afternoon moved slowly. He tried to act normal when his child came home, help with homework, warmed leftovers for dinner, but his mind was somewhere else. Every sound outside made him look toward the door. He kept thinking about the lawyers' faces. Calm, serious, not the kind of people who showed up by mistake. After dinner, he sent his child to their room with a book and promised to check in soon. He cleaned the kitchen even though it was already clean. His hands needed something to do. When the knock finally came, his heart jumped. He opened the door to find the same two people standing there. The man held a leather briefcase. The woman carried the same folder. They asked again if they could come in. This time, he stepped aside and let them sit at the small table. "I don't have much time," he said. "My child is here." "We understand," the woman replied. "We'll be respectful." The man opened the briefcase and placed several papers on the table, neatly stacked. Seeing official-looking documents made everything feel more real. The woman spoke first. "We represent the estate of the man whose funeral you attended." He nodded slowly. "Okay." "He was a very private person," she continued. "Most people who work with him did not know much about his life outside of work." "That doesn't surprise me," he said. "I barely knew him." The man leaned forward. "What you didn't know is that he was extremely wealthy." The word hung in the air. Wealthy. It sounded strange in his small kitchen. "I don't see what that has to do with me," he said carefully. The woman nodded. "That's fair. Let me explain." She told him that the man had no close family, no children, no one who depended on him in the usual way. Over the years, he had become focused on one question: who deserved what he had built? Not who was related by blood, but who lived with decency. He believed character showed itself in small moments, she said. Moments when no one was watching. The man added, before his death, he arranged for certain events to be observed without people knowing they were being observed. A cold feeling moved through his chest. Observed how? There were people present at the funeral, the woman said. Not just to mourn. He thought of the quiet room, the strangers. The feeling that day had been heavier than usual. You were seen helping someone with no expectation of reward. The man said, you did not know who she was. You did not ask questions. You did not seek attention. He shook his head. I was just being human. That, the woman replied gently, is exactly the point. He sat back, struggling to process what he was hearing. So what does this mean? The woman took a breath. It means you were named in his final instructions. Silence filled the room. He could hear his child turning a page in the other room. Named how? He asked. The man slid one document closer to him, as a beneficiary. His first reaction was disbelief, then fear, then anger. This doesn't make sense, he said. I didn't know him. I don't want trouble, if this is a mistake. It isn't, the woman said firmly but kindly. We verified everything. He pushed the paper back toward them. I don't want money that isn't mine. The man nodded. That tells us even more about you. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the dark. His street looked the same as always. Quiet, ordinary. How much are we talking about? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. The lawyers exchanged a glance. The woman spoke slowly. $500 million. The room spun. He grabbed the back of the chair to steady himself. No, he said, that's not possible. It is, the man replied, and it's legally yours. He laughed once, sharp and hollow. You have the wrong person. We don't, the woman said. We've confirmed your identity, your actions, and the conditions of the will. He felt sick. This doesn't happen to people like me. Sometimes it does, she said softly. His thoughts raced. Debts, work, his child, the fear of losing control, the fear of losing privacy, the fear of becoming someone else overnight. I need time, he said. I can't even think. Of course, the man replied. We're not here to rush you. The woman gathered the papers. We'll give you copies. Read them when you're ready. We'll handle the legal process slowly and quietly as requested. Requested by who? He asked. By the man who left the state, she said. He valued discretion. They stood to leave. At the door, the woman paused. There's one more thing you should know, she said. The woman you helped. She was important to him. Her well-being mattered deeply. Your kindness toward her confirmed everything he believed. After they left, he locked the door and slid down against it, sitting on the floor. His hands shook. He pressed them together, trying to breathe. $500 million. The number felt unreal, dangerous, heavy. His child's door opened. Are you okay? They asked. He forced himself to stand and smile. Yeah, just tired. Later that night, after his child was asleep, he sat alone at the table with the papers spread out in front of him. The words blurred together. Trusts, accounts, conditions, all legal, all real. He thought back to the funeral, to the moment he almost stayed seated, to the choice that took less than a minute. He had help because it felt right, not because he expected anything. Now, that same choice was asking him a question he never thought he'd face. What do you do when your life changes in a single day? He folded the papers and placed them in a drawer. Tomorrow, he would wake up, make breakfast, and take his child to school. He needed one more normal day. But deep down, he knew normal was already gone. He did not sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, numbers filled his head. Not just the number the lawyers mentioned, but smaller ones too. Rent, groceries, school shoes, doctor visits. His mind kept jumping between the life he knew and the life that now seemed to be waiting for him, like a door cracked open that he was afraid to push. When morning came, he moved through the house quietly. He made breakfast, packed a bag, and walked his child to school like always. He listened, nodded, smiled when needed. From the outside, nothing had changed. That almost made it harder. He dropped his child off and stood for a moment outside the school gate, watching other parents hurry away. None of them knew what he was carrying inside. At work, he made mistakes. Small ones, but noticeable. His hands hesitated. His thoughts drifted. A co-worker asked if he was okay. He said he was just tired. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth felt too big to say out loud. By lunchtime, his phone buzzed. A message from the woman lawyer. She said they would be available later if he had questions. He stared at the screen, then turned the phone face down. He wasn't ready. That evening, after dinner, he finally opened the drawer and took out the papers again. He read them slowly this time, line by line. Some parts still didn't make sense, but others were clear. The money was real. The instructions were real. The man who had died had planned this carefully. This was not a joke or a mistake. What surprised him most was how personal the instructions felt. The man had written about values, about dignity, about how people treated others when no one was watching. It wasn't cold legal language. It sounded almost like a letter. One paragraph stayed with him. It explained that the woman at the funeral had been someone the man cared deeply about, not in a simple way. Their connection had been complicated and private. The pregnancy was part of a future he would never see. He had wanted to know that she would be treated with kindness, not curiosity or judgment. That was why the test had mattered. The man had believed that if someone could show quiet care to a stranger in pain, they could be trusted with something greater. He closed the papers and sat back. His chest felt tight again, but this time it wasn't fear alone. It was sadness. The man had known he was dying. He had set all this in motion, knowing he would not be there to see the outcome. 2 days later, the lawyers returned. This time, he invited them in without hesitation. He had questions, many of them. They talked for hours, about security, about privacy, about what would happen next. The money would not arrive all at once. There were steps, safeguards. The man had wanted to protect him from being overwhelmed. You don't have to change anything right away, the woman lawyer said. In fact, we recommend you don't. He nodded. That made sense. They also explained that his name would not be made public. That was another instruction from the man. No press, no announcements, no attention. He didn't want this to become a spectacle, the man lawyer said. He wanted it to remain what it was meant to be. A reward for character, not a headline. When they left, he felt lighter than before. Not because the situation was easier, but because he was no longer alone in it. That night, he told his child a simple version of the truth, that things might get easier soon, that they wouldn't have to worry as much. He did not mention numbers or details. His child hugged him and said they were glad he looked less tired. That alone made everything feel worth it. Over the next few weeks, changes came slowly. He paid off overdue bills, fixed things in the house he had been ignoring. He still went to work, still packed lunches, still lived the same routine. The money stayed quiet in the background, like a safety net he was afraid to test. One afternoon, he received another call. This time, it was a pregnant woman. "I heard you were contacted," she said gently. "Yes," he replied. There was a pause. "I want you to know, none of this was meant to trap you, or surprise you like this." "I know," he said. And he did. She explained a little more. About the man. About his fears. About how much it meant to her that someone had help without asking questions. Her voice shook as she spoke. "You didn't see me as a problem," she said. "You just saw me as a person." He swallowed. "That's all anyone ever is." They spoke for a while longer. Not about money. About life. About loss. About how strange the future can feel. After the call ended, he sat in silence. He thought about how close he had come to staying seated that day. How easy it would have been to look away. Weeks turned into months. The money began to settle into accounts. Advisors came and went. Plans were made carefully. He took time off work, not to celebrate, but to think. To decide what kind of person he wanted to be with this new power in his hands. He did not want to become someone unrecognizable. He thought about his past, about the help he never received, about nights when a small kindness could have changed everything. That guided him. He set up funds quietly, for education, for housing support, for people who needed help but didn't know how to ask. He did not attach his name to them. He didn't want thanks. He wanted results. At home, life felt calmer, lighter. His child laughed more, slept better. So did he. Sometimes, late at night, he thought about the man who had started all this. A quiet man, a private man, someone who believed in unseen moments. He never visited the grave again. He didn't need to. The lesson was already with him. Kindness, he learned, doesn't end when the moment passes. Sometimes, it echoes far beyond what we can imagine. Time had a strange way of settling things. What once felt unreal slowly became part of his daily life. Not in loud or dramatic ways, but quietly. The kind of quiet that felt steady instead of heavy. He learned that having money did not erase fear overnight. It simply changed the shape of it. At first, he worried about doing the wrong thing, about trusting the wrong people, about losing control. He had lived so long with very little that abundance felt dangerous, like something that could disappear if he touched it too carelessly. So he moved slowly. Every choice was measured, every step thought through. He kept the same house, the same old car. He still woke up early to make breakfast and pack lunches. Some people expect a sudden change, but he found comfort in routine. It reminded him who he was before everything shifted. He needed that anchor. His child noticed a difference before anyone else did. Not the money, but the calm. Fewer late nights staring at bills. Fewer quiet sighs. More time. More patience. They talked more. Laughed more. Took walks in the evening just because they could. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a simple show, his child asked, "Are we going to be okay now?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Yes, we are." And for the first time, he believed it without fear. As months passed, he began to use the money with purpose. Not to impress, not to escape, but to repair. He fixed what had been broken for too long. He paid medical bills that once felt impossible. He set aside education funds. He built stability brick by brick. He also thought about others. He remembered nights when he sat alone, wondering how one small problem could ruin everything. He remembered how invisible he felt, how close he came to giving up. Those memories guided him more than any advisor ever could. Quietly, carefully, he began to help. A local school received funding for meals. A shelter was repaired. Families struggling with rent found help without knowing where it came from. He never showed up, never asked for recognition. He preferred it that way. The lawyers checked in from time to time. They were impressed, but not surprised. This is exactly what he hoped for. One of them said once, he didn't need to ask who he was. Every so often, he spoke with the woman from the funeral. Their conversations were not frequent, but they were honest. She told him her child was healthy, that life was still hard, but manageable. That kindness had found its way back to her in unexpected forms. "You change more than you know," she said once. He shook his head, even though she couldn't see him. "We all do," he replied. "We just don't always get to see it." One afternoon, he returned to the same building where the funeral had been held. Not for service, just to sit. The place looked ordinary now. Empty chairs. Sunlight through dusty windows. He sat in the back row, the same spot as before. He thought about that version of himself. Tired, uncertain, carrying more weight than anyone could see. He wished he could tell that man that things would be okay. That one small choice would ripple outward in ways he could never imagine. But maybe that was the point. Maybe kindness only works because we don't know the ending when we give it. When he stood to leave, he felt no sadness, only gratitude. Years later, life looked very different, yet somehow the same. His child grew older, stronger, more confident. They knew where they came from. They knew what mattered. Money was never hidden, but it was never worshipped either. It was treated like a tool, nothing more. One evening, as they cleaned up after dinner, his child asked, "Why do you help so many people?" He thought for a moment. "Because someone once needed help," he said, "and I didn't walk away." That answer seemed enough. He never told the full story. Not to friends, not to co-workers, not even to extended family. It wasn't a secret out of shame. It was private out of respect. Some moments deserved to stay untouched. On quiet nights, when the house was still, he sometimes thought about how close he came to missing it all. One choice, one step forward instead of staying seated. One moment of seeing another person and deciding they mattered. The world did not change overnight. It never does. But his world did. Slowly, gently, in ways that lasted. And if there was one thing he carried with him above all else, it was this. You never know how far a small kindness can go. Sometimes it changes everything.